So good morning, everyone. Guten Morgen, meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest today. Mariana Risetto will speak with us today about Corona and Corona-related issues and solutions and visions in Argentina. Mariana, it's so good to have you here. Welcome. Good morning. How are you today?
Hi, good morning, Nicolas. Good morning, guten Morgen to everyone. I'm very fine. Thank you very much. I'm really excited for being here, and provide you with another country overlook on the Corona situation, and specifically when it concerns to Argentina, as well as the legal implications that this has.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So as you said, you are from Argentina, and I said it too, I think. So could you perhaps briefly indicate how you made your way to Austria and to Vienna in particular?
Well, I'm, as you said, I'm from born and raised in Argentina. I studied also there law. I came here to Austria already 7.5 years ago because of the two reasons that more or less one travel is either move to another country, either professional or love reason. My reason was the second one.
Yes. Okay. And then you spent several years in Austria, but then moved to the University of Vienna, right? And you've been working with us now for quite some time already.
Exactly, yes. As you know, I joined in February last year the department as a research associate, Projektmitarbeiterin in German, and I'm currently working in two main projects, European funded projects with focus on health and data protection, artificial intelligence, and health research, of course. These two are, the first one that I'm responsible for is called the Virtual Brain Cloud project, and I'm also collaborating in the Biomap project, both health-related projects, and we are specifically providing legal support in terms of the legal and regulatory framework that may involve, of course, the continuation of the projects.
Yes, and so the main focus you're dealing with is health-related data protection issues, a lot of GDPR-related problems that are on your desk on a daily basis, which brings you certainly in a perfect position to assess what's happening in worldwide at the moment when it comes to privacy, Corona, and information technology. So this is certainly one of the aspects of this talk that I'm very much looking forward to learning from you. But before that, perhaps could you kindly give us a very broad overview about how the situation in Argentina is at the moment?
Sure. So at the moment, there are 1,700 infected persons with occurring disease, already 60 deceased, unfortunately, persons. Although we have to look into what a context in Argentina is. I mean, the population of Argentina is 44 million, roughly. Population in Argentina, so of course the proportionality between these two numbers is quite low. Although as far as I researched, there were at the moment from the beginning where they started doing the testing, there was the first registered case was on the 3rd of March of this year. There are 7,000 tests being carried out so far, which to my knowledge, this is quite a low number in comparison with other countries that have been performing much more tests worldwide.
Okay. And are there any limitations on persons' behavior already applied, or is everybody still free to do whatever he or she wants to?
No, since so there was an evolution in terms of measures that were imposed by the Argentinian government. The first one was a travel restriction, so prohibiting or banning people entering into the country, specific foreign population. And the second one was from the 29th of March, there is a complete compulsory quarantine for everyone in the country, insofar that there are specific forms in order to be able to circulate with your vehicle. And of course, you have several exceptions, as here in Austria, for people who are allowed to let's say, go out from their houses, specifically health workers, people that if you need to care about someone else or do the groceries for someone else, if you need to go to work, this has to be authorized also by the national authorities, and basically that's the exceptions that you have at the moment.
Yeah. So universities are closed, for example?
Universities are closed, yes, and also schools. From the universities, all these measures were actually are taken until the 13th of April. Mm-hmm. There are certain, according to certain statements of the president, these are going to be, some measures are going to be levied or mitigated because specifically of the economic crisis that Argentina is living now and is going actually to live in the future, also strengthened by the coronavirus. Universities have an autonomy in terms of their autonomous entities, also provided by the respective law. So the universities have the possibility to decide what type of measures they are going to take. The University of Buenos Aires, in this regard, I'm aware that they impose they declare also the kind of the quarantine, no classes being held. And they postponed the start of the semester, which would have started already in March, to June.
To June, wow.
To June, mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so there's already a new, let's say, program in terms of timing and semester-wise for the year 2020 and 21. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think one of the reasons why this was actually, the reasons of taking this decision is specifically because the e-learning, online learning is not for all students available. So as you know, given, let's say, the Argentinian population, and also in terms of the numbers in terms of poverty, and not all students have access to the same technical equipment in order to follow an online learning. And this is one of the reasons that, this is my opinion, they postponed the start of the classes at university level. In terms of schools, this is again, they are suspended until further notice. Further notice again is on the 13th of April, but already the president has informed that schools classes at schools are going to start, let's say, quite late in the year, mm-hmm. Most probably also May, June.
Yeah, and students therefore are not able to study anything at the moment because simply no classes are taught and universities closed, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the approach that the government had instead of doing an e-learning or another provisional measures during the time, of the start of the semester. Then they postpone it to have, let's say, a full complete curriculum from the date on, let's say, be June, July, August.
Yeah, and students, I assume, are not the only ones who are hit by this from an economical point of view very severely. The whole Argentinian economical situation is probably clearly getting worse at the moment, like everywhere else in the world. But Argentina is already in a crisis, isn't it? So it must be very severe at the moment.
Yes. So the economic crisis is already, let's say, declared many years ago by a decree of what is called the decree of necessary need and urgency. By these decrees are issued by the president of Argentina, and this is already declared, so that we are on an economic crisis. Of course, I have no numbers in terms of unemployment rates due to coronavirus. Yes, what I can tell you so far is the unemployment. Let's say that the people in terms of poverty, there are statistics from public entities that last year poverty was 25% of the whole population of Argentina, to 40% if you look into private statistics. So yes, access to the labor market is quite limited, and this of course will affect the situation and will actually grave the situation in the country. Therefore, there were certain economic measures that the Argentinian government already issued in order to specifically help those who were already unemployed, or what we called our informal workers. They provide 40, what is equivalent of 42 euros monthly to support these two categories if they are receiving or perceiving state support.
Mm-hmm. So 40% poverty rate, you say, and at the same time the population supports the measures that are undertaken, or is it an issue that people don't follow the rules?
To the extent of my knowledge, as I'm living in Austria, the people are quite supportive of the measures so far, specifically considering the health-related situation that is also in crisis, and Argentina will not have enough capacity to handle, let's say, patients infected due to the coronavirus. And so therefore the measures that were actually issued were quite early. That's already on the 12th of March. We have to think that in comparison with Europe, Argentina is with more of 2 weeks in advance. Mm-hmm. So the quarantine that was issued already on limited quarantine was already issued on the 12th of March, which was quite early, in order to foster the prevention and mitigation of the virus, and specifically spread of the virus.
Yeah.
So yes, to your question, there is a support. Mainly, but on the other hand, there are also some debates on the type of measures that were issued, and also the constitutionality of those measures that perhaps we can discuss a little bit later, and specifically those measures who affect the employers in the country. And I can tell you one example. For example, one example that was one of the measures ban the dismissal of employees in the private sector. Mm-hmm. And in the case that this is actually, if this dismissal happens anyway, there is, let's say, the amount that you pay to your dismissed employee is double. And this affects quite broad to small and medium enterprises. Mm-hmm. There's also some thoughts about imposing a tax on medium and big enterprises based on a status quo of last year on certain taxes that they had to declare declare some black money that was in the country. It's called in Spanish blanqueo de capitales. This is for me now a little bit complicated to translate, and this is highly opposed because they will change something that they try, let's say, to improve, of course, the economic and the situation of certain enterprises, and then this would mean, of course, a throwback.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when it comes to the constitutionality of all this, so if I understand it correctly, the president declared the state of emergency, and that means what exactly?
So the president declared through this what I call decree of necessity and urgency. This is legislative, let's say, legislative competence that the president has through one specific article of the Argentinian constitution. Only, I mean, this kind of legal instruments can only be issued in certain circumstances and cannot overlap the powers that the Congress has according to the Constitution. All these measures have been issued through this legal instrument, although there are certain debates, not huge ones, I have to admit, but there are certain debates that many of the measures that were issued by this decree are either unconstitutional in terms of the choice of the legal instrument that the president chose, or also that's another issue, most of the content of the measures are unconstitutional because they violate they are in breach of fundamental rights also set forth in the Constitution. These are, let's say, the two strings of legal debate that is taking place so far.
Yes, so the constitutionality of some of the measures taken is under debate. Why exactly? Could you perhaps go a little bit more into detail which fundamental rights are affected, where they are guaranteed, and whether there's any significant legal debate on this ongoing at the moment?
Yes. Basically, the right that is, let's say, under discussion is the right to, let's say, of movement within the country and entering and leaving the country. This is a right that is inserted in the Constitution and also has of course constitutional hierarchy, but it's also recognized in international human rights instruments, which have under the Argentinian constitution the same constitutional hierarchy. This is specifically, and this was triggered out by one of the measures that was imposed a couple of weeks ago, that was the prohibition or ban of Argentinian nationals or residents in Argentina to enter the country. So there you have the debate and the debate specifically. And what is also important to mention, Nicolas, you said, yes, the Argentinian government declared the state of emergency in terms of health on the 12th of May. This does not specifically exclude that fundamental rights are still in place. So it's not, let's say, a state of, I mean, there are two types of the state of emergency and under Argentinian constitution, and this is not the one that actually forbids or limits certain fundamental rights.
Okay, and it's on the 12th of March, not May, right? You said May,
March. I said May again. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so there are two different states of emergency in the Argentinian constitution, and this one is is this something that happens frequently, that this one that we have at the moment is declared officially, or is this a rare incident?
No, this happens frequently, and actually this is one of the let's say the instruments and the state of emergency to declare the economic emergency that we are living in already for many years now. The other sort was, as far as I remember, only resorted to 4 times in Argentinian history. And one of those was the time of the big economic crisis in 2001.
Okay, so and although it's standard procedure in the sense that it happens frequently, people are supporting these measures, and although the economical situation is so very bad.
Exactly. Yes. This is basically what also many colleagues from Argentina, family and friends have, let's say, have told me and have reported. There are certain, let's say, also signs from the for example, the judicial power to also help the situation, and the members of the National Court of Argentina, I think it was 2 days ago, they reduced their salaries in order to support to the situation. This is actually seen quite in a good will by the Argentinian population, because also there was also the claim to reduce the salary of public officials.
Okay, but it's only a claim at the moment, so there is no law or a similar legal instrument requiring that public servants or public officials get less payment.
No, there is no law at the moment. There's only a claim, quite a big one, but no law at the moment.
But I would assume that the average payment of people working in public service in Argentina is not really very high, and that therefore this would not really target privileged parts of the population, correct?
I don't know exactly. I cannot tell you exactly now the numbers of like the amount of the salary of public officials.
Yeah, but I mean, just in comparison, I mean, would it be, if you had stayed in Argentina, would public service been an attractive career perspective for you? I mean, just from the salary point of view?
Yes.
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 So
and plus,
it's competitive.
You have it's competitive, and you also have certain privileges like unlimited contract. You are part of the public administration, and this is quite well protected in terms of administrative labor law.
Yeah, and in particular in times like this one here now at the moment, it's certainly an advantage to have an unlimited, relatively stable contract, right? So
this was basically
it. Yeah, but so there is some debate, but there's no law or similar at the moment cutting salaries at the moment. Although, for example, university professors don't. I mean, what are they doing at the moment if they can't teach? Do they do research?
You can ask my father, who is. Yes, basically, I mean, they started, as far as I know, they started already to look into possibilities of doing e-learning at the university faculty level, because also, and what I missed to say already is that even though there was this, let's say, decree issued by the director of the University of Buenos Aires to postpone the start of the classes. So there are already 2 faculties who have said that they would not accept this according to a specific clause in that decree.
Okay.
And so they are looking into e-learning possibilities.
Okay. So that is also very South American in a way,
isn't it?
This is
also very South American.
Okay.
I can tell you, I mean, unfortunately, I don't have the decree. I, of course, can write it there, what clause have the faculties available to in order to make this exception for those 2 faculties.
So just for those out there who are not in universities, university professors do not only teach. There's quite some other aspects of the work that probably continues, and distance learning is by far more time consuming and also challenging than traditional ways of teaching. So I'm quite sure that the staff is quite under pressure at the moment, also in Argentina, at universities. But still, I could assume that the general public asks questions about the payment if education is not undertaken, right? So. And I would expect that this debate is going to start in many of the European member states as well. So I even know that in Spain, it's already happening that people start debating whether it's appropriate that public servants continue to get their monthly salary, although they work less and although many people run into personal bankruptcy at the moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the let's say justification for specifically professors at the university was specifically that of postponing, also because the winter holidays for during the semester that normally happens June, July, will not happen. So that would be, of course, yes, postponed, but anyway, then
Yes.
your salary will be retributed. I
Yes.
mean, your work will be retributed somehow.
Yeah, but it will again be difficult for the students then, because not having holidays means not being able to do practical work and clerkship and all this, what you normally do during the holidays, as a law student in particular, right? So
True. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not in the field to assess that, but yes, this has other consequences. I think this is only my opinion, and please take it like this. I think this is a good way specifically to guarantee education to everyone, specifically coming from public universities. This is in Argentina very important, that all students have the same equal, let's say, access to education. And e-learning or distance learning is unfortunately not fully, let's say, compliant with this ideal.
Yes.
That's why I think could be, I mean, is one way forward.
Yes. So there is still a significant amount of students, also students of law, who don't have the necessary infrastructure to follow classes online, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
And there is an important difference between private universities, which are in a way elite institutions, and public universities that are accessible for people with an average income, correct?
That's correct. Yes. In Argentina, there are. I mean, one of the things that we can say that we are proud of is of our public universities, because exactly of that reason, everyone has the possible access to, of course, to study. Even though you need a minimum, let's say, income in order to be able to study. Anyway, the university provides for the resources to be able to do a career. There is, as far as I remember, approximately 20 in the country, public universities, but I would assume, and this is not fact checked, but I would assume there's much more, let's say, double of private universities, because the private sector has also quite a stand in the career. And this, depending, of course, on what kind of university, this can also be accessible for a medium, let's say, medium class person.
Yeah. And which ones are the most prestigious ones, or the most attractive ones?
Public universities is my alma mater, the University of Buenos Aires, the University of Córdoba, University of Rosario too. These are the most prestigious ones.
And they are public.
And they are public, yes.
If you have a choice to make, and if you are a smart young person, you go to the public university and not to the private one.
I would say so, yes.
Yes, okay. So that, and then,
but this is a bias, that's a biased opinion.
Yeah, I mean, everything that we are doing is biased because it's personal.
But there are many private universities that are very good, running quite well in the country. So yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is an important aspect in my view, because I mean, as you know now from Vienna, I mean, everyone is doing distance learning at the moment, and everyone is doing distance teaching at the moment. What is not always discussed is whether people have the infrastructure to do this on both sides, right? So not I mean, in particular in regular schools, I see it that teachers of regular schools here in Vienna not necessarily have the infrastructure at home to do online teaching on a regular basis. And that's also obviously very true for pupils and students. So in my personal situation here at home at the moment, I mean, I have two children, 16 and 18, and they're sitting in front of their computer 8 hours or 10 hours a day at the moment. If they didn't have their own one, and if we had only one for all four of us, it would be a very serious problem at the moment. So that has a certain important social aspect that is not really discussed too deeply, at least in my perspective here in this country, and seemingly different in Argentina, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, there is no, just to add, if I may, there is no specific budget, I mean, for professors or teachers to acquire the infrastructure. So those professors or teachers that want to let's say, to provide this option, online option, they have to carry the cost themselves.
Yeah, that's in a way quite similar to here. I mean, in particular, in undergraduate schools, teachers are not equipped by the institution in many cases. But even in university environments, it's not really often the case that people are able to use university infrastructure at home. So many of the devices used at the moment are private devices, right? Privately owned devices. Yeah. But perhaps, if I may, Mariana, although this is also a very interesting aspect of the debate, if I may, however, come back a little bit more into the fundamental rights discussion, and also in how the daily situation in Argentina at the moment, at least as far as you can see it, looks like. So if I understood you correctly, people are not allowed to leave, right? People are not allowed to work. People are not allowed to, to do everyday leisure activities. So they are in a way locked in, quite similar to the situation we have here in Austria at the moment. And on top of all this, I would assume that the average size of the average apartment, at least in the major cities, is clearly smaller than here. So the pressure on the people is clearly higher. So are there any concerns about the length of all this and how to get out of this situation again?
Yes, there are concerns, and the president has already stated in a press conference a couple of days ago that because of all these pressures and different factors, as you rightly mentioned, social, economic specific factor, and the pressure that this actually does into the population, from the 13th of May, they are starting to levy some of these stricter measures. As far as I read from the statement, for example, the lockdown is going to be more flexible. So there are going to be some industries that are going to allow to start to work again. Specifically to what extent, whether it's completely full, let's say, industry, full-time work. This is not specific clarified yet.
And is it how is this technically happening? Is it the government independently deciding on this, or is it the president, or who is the one who finally takes the decision, and who can challenge this decision then?
So the decision is taken as all these measures. Starting like this, as all these measures are issued by the kind of decree. It is a constitutional legal instrument. So you could challenge as let's say this into a constitutional court.
And that isn't. This is a realistic option, or is it just theory?
It's theory. To the extent of my knowledge, yes.
Okay. And in political day-to-day practice, it's the president is taking the decision, so it's one person.
So no. So he's having meetings and consulting with the different ministries involved, specifically Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Science and Technology, certain sub-entities within these different issues. But yes, after these measures are taken, and of course the measures are taken by the president per se, although of course these decrees who declare the health emergency already gave some further competencies to the different ministries to address certain situations under administrative decisions, yeah, to mitigate this.
But to me, this looks like a very, how should I put this diplomatically, to a very interesting, let's say interesting concentration of power in very few hands, and no real democratic, I mean, classical democratic control of all this. Is that picture correct? Would you share that view?
If I have to make a recommendation to the president on how to handle this, I would actually tell him that he would need more check and balances when taking this kind of decisions.
So then I would think that, I mean, if we are talking about such fundamental things, then probably the more sophisticated problems, sophisticated in the sense that you need more technology, are not really on people's day-to-day agenda. So probably data protection or privacy is not their primary concern at the moment, is it?
No.
No. Yeah.
There is in terms of there's only one app that has been let's say put in place. This app, what it does is called COVID-19. It's a self-assessment app where you can self-assess whether you have the disease or not, and to whom you should contact. Unfortunately, the terms and conditions of this app are not available online. And the statement that I read from the Access of Information Office, that is the office that has the equivalent of the Data Protection Authority here in European countries, is only that all the measures that are taken in the framework of the coronavirus need to comply with the data protection law, Argentinian data protection law. That's basically it.
Yeah, and the Argentina data protection law is quite similar to GDPR in many senses, isn't it?
So yes, there is an adequacy decision from the European Commission to the law. So yes, I haven't seen. Of course, there are certain criticisms. Specifically, if you look into the report that the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the right to privacy made on his in-situ visit last year, in May 2019, he specifically was concerned on the possibility of not providing consent to the collection and processing by public authorities for any purpose that the public authorities display. This was specifically one of the concerns that he mentioned. When it comes to surveillance, he also stated that there was also a non-concern in Argentina, since Argentina does not have enough adequate technical solutions to be considered civilian state. So he kind of, well, he specifically says this is not a problem as of now. Yeah,
but simply because the technology is not really available yet, not because of the checks and balances that are.
That's correct.
Right. Wow. Okay. So if you see from your background then what's going on in Vienna and in Austria at the moment, what would be your recommendation to this country with your background on how to deal with all this? What would you change? What would you support? Is there anything that you would like to share with the Austrian viewers?
So basically what I would share is from, let's say, the Argentinian perspective. What I said already, I would recommend a check of balances and more involvement of civil society in the measures there, since I see a lack of this involvement, and perhaps, as far as I know, here in Austria, perhaps also hearing other voices to protect specifically certain fundamental rights should be encouraged.
Yes, but yeah, okay, that is very true. At the same time, one of the challenging factors is that time pressure is evidently important, and that involvement of NGOs requires time. But I take that recommendation as a very important one also for this country in particular. Mariana, thank you so much. Is there any final statement that you would like to share with the audience and me on this issue?
Just if I may say some concluding words, I want to thank you all, you specifically for the interview, the department, and as well. I want to say to the viewers, keep tuned, stay tuned. Our next Boni session is going to be about Poland. I'm really confident about that, specifically because of the speaker, and hopefully see you all soon and stay healthy.
Yeah, that's very kind of you, Mariana, because that would have been exactly my final statement. So stay tuned, please. Please subscribe to this channel. We will have Poland on Friday. We will have Slovenia and the US next week. So we are ongoing with this in the very near future, and we are very much looking forward to all these events, and we are very much looking forward to keep in touch with you. Please write us comments, stay tuned, and have a very good and a very safe day. All the best to all of you. Thank you. Thank you, Mariana. Again, it was very, very interesting. I really learned a lot. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.